Hi, I'm Jeff Schwartz, and we just got back from SEMA. This is our November update. We got all kinds of cool stuff going on in the shop. Let's check it out. Well, we've got the chassis fitted on this 69 Super Bee. We're currently working on air conditioning. The unit's been mounted under the dash, and we've got the AC hoses mocked up here from the bulkhead to the unit. And this will get pulled up and tucked in here underneath the fender, so they won't be visible in the nicely painted engine bay. The 56 Pontiac Safari wagon's coming along nicely. We've put together a lot of the bright trim on the front here. Quite a Chinese jigsaw puzzle with all the multiple pieces composing of that bumper and grille assembly. We've had to add some fittings underneath the intake manifold, vacuum fittings to operate the brake booster and so forth. And we've nearly finished fabricating the exhaust system. We're swapping the chassis on this 59 Bel Air. It already had an LS and a 6-speed, but now it's getting the Schwartz G-Machine chassis to go along with that. This is the 73 Camaro we've been working on. It's got LSA in it, and we've made it E85 capable as well. Customer just sent in these awesome wheels. Not quite sure how they're going to look with the green calipers though. This 71 CUDA, we're in the process of mounting the air ride unit in the trunk here, as well as the battery, and then we'll be running the air lines for the system. This is a stock 59 Chevy chassis, commonly referred to as an X-frame chassis. These were used on General Motors cars from 58 until 64. As you can see, it looks like an X. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you don't want this. I think General Motors was thinking that by having the chassis configured this way, it was easier to get in and out of the car where you didn't have to climb over like a chassis rail. But it was just a bad idea. We've got a center support bearing for the drive shaft in the middle there. The entire thing twists like a wet noodle. There's no room to run a good dual exhaust. You've got your engine up here, and somehow or another to run a dual exhaust you've got to come under the frame rail and out on the side here, which is going to impede your ground clearance. This is why we make a perimeter chassis for this particular model of GM cars. We've engineered it in such a way where we use most of the factory body mount locations, and you do have to cut a small slot on the edge of your floor, but this is what we've replaced on the 59 Chevy. We've just fitted the chassis on this 70 Buick Skylark. This thing is a post-coupe car, which is even more rare than a regular hardtop. The interesting thing is the owner of this car has owned it since 1972. That's almost original owner of the car. So he's owned it a long time and waited a while to get it resurrected, but this thing's moving along pretty quickly, and it's got an LS7 and a 6-speed. We've got an awesome design by Ben Hermance that we'll be executing. Check it out. This Eleanor Mustang, we fitted metal front fenders to it, and now we'll have to make the ground effects blend into these fenders. It's also got a metal hood on it instead of the gigantic bulgy fiberglass one, and we've got to do a little tweaking here on the shape of the hood scoop. We finished the chassis and got it mocked up under the 50 Studebaker here. It's got a 6.2 liter LS, and since LS engines were one of the ugliest engines ever built, we're going to try to dress this one up and make it look like an original Studebaker V8. I'll show you the intake setup shortly, and we'll end up with some finned aluminum Studebaker valve covers along with an oil filler in the valley cover to mimic the Studebaker engine. What we've got here is a GM carbureted style intake. This one has the injector bungs machined into it so we can run direct port injection with the fuel rails here. And then we've got this Schwartz CNC machined throttle body spacer that bolts on there. And then we've got a GM throttle body that goes on here. And then this is an original Studebaker air cleaner, which will get modified slightly to clamp onto the throttle body. and then we will have a larger snorkel here, so it's got enough airflow to not restrict the horsepower. So this is how we're going to make our intake setup on the Studebaker. Studebaker engines had a valley cover, a flat valley cover similar to an LS engine that went right under this part of the intake manifold. There was a speed part back in the day that had there was a finned valley cover. Incidentally, Holley just recently come out with a finned valley cover for LS engines, so we'll be using that on this engine as well to give it that vintage Studebaker look. Studebakers also had an oil filler that came up out of the valley cover ahead of the air cleaner, so we will be making one of those as well and machining that into the valley cover to give it as correct of a vintage look as we can make it. So we're in the final mock-up stages of the Raybestos 53 Chevy pickup. We've test fitted our accessory drive, however it interferes with the inner fenders, so we're having to modify that a bit. We've got some wooden mock-up pieces here on the engine that we're bolting the accessories to try to move it inward, essentially duplicating what we have but just moving it inboard so we have more clearance. We're doing AC hoses and just some final mock-up things before this gets blown apart and painted. This 49 Ford F3 truck is moving along. We've got everything kind of mocked up as well here. We need to do a bit more sanding on it. We've modified the dash to fit a stereo system and AC controls behind the original speaker grill in the factory dash, so it looks stock, but you'll be able to remove that with magnets, and then behind it will be the stereo. We've also eliminated the springs from the seat, and we've made seat pans. We'll be putting high density foam on top of there, and that'll allow us to reshape the seat for more comfort and a little more room between the steering wheel. We've also got wheels on here finally. These are the Circle Racing OE series wheels. They look like steel wheels, but they're made out of billet. These will get painted black, and then this truck will be painted Destroyer Gray. It's a Chrysler color that's a non-metallic gray. So the wheels will have black paint with the factory hubcap, and then the Destroyer Gray on the exterior should blend nicely with that. The other interesting thing about the F3 trucks is the wheel well openings are very large. So on this truck we went with a 20-inch wheel and a fairly tall tire to fill those wheel well openings. Anything smaller would have kind of dwarfed that wheel well opening and looked not real good. So I'm glad they fit real nicely, and we've got 12-inch ride reels in the back and 9s in the front. That's all for now. Stay tuned for next month's update.